Hello, dear listeners, and welcome back to Cozy with Chelsea, a podcast to nourish your mind, body, and soul. I am Chelsea, of course, your host, and today we're going to have a Valentine's Day themed episode. So we are talking about love. We are talking about self-love. What is love? What does love even mean? And how can we show ourselves love? And how does that support us loving others? Before we continue with today's episode, I do want to share something I've actually been loving, which is the Activations app. If you haven't heard of it, it's an app that has guided activations. So that's why it's called Activations. But I heard about it on another podcast actually, and I've been using it for months. And you can go on there and they have different themes. They have a nighttime tidy up one that I've been doing that you listen to, and it's like to clear your space before you go to bed, get ready for sleep. They have ones to start your morning and have a good day. I mean, there's so much in there, but I really have been loving it. It's great if you're working on self-love, healing, confidence, stepping into a more aligned version of yourself. I think it's a very powerful tool for that. So if you're interested in checking it out, I do have a link that I will put in the show notes. If you use that link, you will get an additional 25% off because you might see a discount on the website, but it's an additional 25%. And I think if you do the yearly one, it works out to $11.99 a month, but you can also do a 2-week free trial before it'll charge you. So check it out. It's something I've really been loving. And if you guys like it, use my code and you'll get 25% off. Okay, back to the episode. So I thought before we dive into love and self-love and all of those things, I wanted to talk about just the history of Valentine's Day and where it came from, because I'm always curious about that when we have these holidays pop up and we have like some commercialized Hallmark version of what used to be some sort of ancient fertility ritual. So I just think it's interesting to look at the history and how it's changed throughout time. So initially, it was an ancient Roman festival called Lupercalia. Please forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. It might be Lupercalia, but it was a festival surrounding fertility and spring. And I think it was very intense. I think there's actually some interesting things associated with that. But that's how it initially started, right? So if we look at Valentine's Day, a day of love and celebration, we kind of understand where that falls into place with fertility rituals. But later on, throughout the course of time, it became associated with Saint Valentine, who, according to legend, supposedly secretly married couples despite opposition. So there's a lot of steps to this. That's a very brief history. But later on, there was a poet, Geoffrey Chaucer, who tied February 14th to romantic devotion. And somehow we've gotten to the point where it's kind of like a very commercialized celebration of love, which is great, but it's all, now kind of associated around buying flowers and chocolate and, there's always like a gift associated with it. But again, a very brief history of Valentine's Day that I thought was a little interesting. We've moved from, these like fertility spring rituals and a saint who supposedly secretly married couples. So it was like love despite opposition. And now we've moved into, a Hallmark love day. And don't get me wrong, I love a Hallmark movie. Okay. So no judgments from me. I love a good romance. So that's the history of Valentine's Day. But I also wanted to talk about what love is, right? And I think it's interesting to think about love as behavior. Because again, a lot of what we're seeing, if we're watching romance movies or really just any sort of romantic relationship in any movie, romance books, there's this like falling in love and it's very intense and passionate, and we don't see the rest of the story for the next 30 years. Okay. So I truly, I am romance books and romance movies #1 fan. Like I have this whole shelf behind me, if you're watching on YouTube, is just romance books. I have another shelf over here, which is my more serious books, but those are the fun ones. And I love a romance story, but I also think, a lot of that changes throughout the course of a relationship, and that love is kind of represented through our behavior and our actions over the course of time. It's not just the butterflies stage or the intense chemistry you feel at the beginning, but it's truly showing up when it's convenient and when it's not, speaking respectfully to each other, even while you're having conflict. It is consistently regulating your nervous system instead of lashing out at someone. And this applies, we're speaking about love here, but this applies to your partner, your significant other, your spouse. It also applies to family members. It applies to your children across the board. And I always say the #1 thing is to being a good parent, a good partner, a good daughter or son is regulating yourself so that when something comes up, you're not lashing out at the other person. You're able to handle that conflict. Love can also be, keeping promises that you've made to people. It could be listening fully to them, being present for conversations, and it's choosing someone again and again, right? Feelings fluctuate, but behavior reveals how we actually love someone and ourselves. And if we think about ourselves, I think sometimes it's so much easier to think about how we show up for others, how we love and care for others, versus how we do that same thing for ourselves, how we show up for ourselves, how we love ourselves, how we take care of ourselves, right? And often we are negating self-love and self-care for the love and care of others. And if we go back to my first point, nervous system regulation, right? So this kind of applies where if your nervous system is regulated, you're able to show up better for others. But the same thing, if you're taking care of yourself, if you're loving yourself, you are then able to show up for others the way that you're showing up for yourself. So if you would think about, okay, if I'm thinking of love as a behavior in the context of loving myself, what does that look like? What we said before, showing up even when it's inconvenient, that applies to yourself too, right? Like if you're having a bad morning, you're having a bad day, and I'll use this example because I've been there. You don't want to shower. You don't want to get ready for the day. You don't want to take care of yourself in that way. It's getting in that shower anyways. And then don't we always feel better after we did that? But it's all of those things. It's showing up for ourselves. It's going to bed when we say we're going to go to bed. It's having an actual nighttime routine so that we rest enough to show up the next day. It is eating food that nourishes you in all ways, right? Like when I say eating food that nourishes you, yes, obviously we want to eat healthy food. And also tonight I'm eating a margarita pizza because that's going to nourish me. And, a big one here too is how do we say this? How you're communicating with others, right? Is self-love texting someone back or continuing to have a relationship with someone who consistently disrespects you? Is it setting boundaries, right, with certain people in our lives? And also keeping promises that we make to ourselves. That is a way that we can love ourselves. It's so easy. I think it feels easier to break a promise to yourself than to others, because who's holding you accountable? Only you are. Now, that doesn't mean it's impossible, but loving yourself is keeping the promises that you make to yourself. And you'll notice this in the way that you feel afterwards, right? Like if you make a promise to make your bed every day, which is something I do most of the time. The days that I make the bed, it takes me 2 minutes. I'm not fluffing the pillows every day. But if I'm getting in there, I'm pulling the sheets up, I'm pulling the comforter up, I'm pulling the third blanket up, and then the fourth blanket, and then I'm putting the pillows. Realistically, it's 60 seconds. And every time that I do it, I feel better afterwards. I've accomplished something, my room looks better, and I feel better. And kept a promise to myself. So, I think a lot of times we think about self-love and self-care as bubble baths and lighting a candle and saying an affirmation. And it is all of those things. Those are self-care. But if we can think about self-love as continued and consistent self-care over time, this is how we can show ourselves that we have the behavior that matches what it looks like when we love ourselves. We have integrity. We are in coherence with our beliefs, our values, and our actions. So we know that self-love is important, self-care is important, and if we love ourselves and care for ourselves, we are able to show up better for others. But what does this really look like this Valentine's Day? If you could think about, how do I want my behavior to align with how I feel about my partner or myself, right? Because Valentine's Day is not just for those that are in a relationship. I know this day can feel either really exciting. Maybe it's your first Valentine's Day with your partner. I had that a little while ago. I actually went to a restaurant on Valentine's Day. I seriously think I had never done that before I met my husband. So that was exciting. We will not be doing that this year, but that was exciting. But for so many years, I didn't have a partner or was in a relationship with a partner that I didn't want to be in. But many years I was alone on Valentine's Day. And I remember when I was younger, kind of dreading Valentine's Day. I mean, there's so much pressure that they put on it, right? But, it's like not being asked to the prom, which I also wasn't asked to prom. And, sometimes it just doesn't feel that good. But as I got older, I realized that Valentine's Day, yes, it can be celebrating the love you and a significant other have. It can also be simply loving and caring for yourself. And then we have this third option too of loving and caring for your friends, a Galentine's Day, if you will. And that's what I ended up doing when I had my little tribe of single woman friends who also had nothing to do on Valentine's Day. And we all went to a restaurant and I got them all, little Valentine's cards and treats, just like we used to do in school. And so there's a lot of different ways to celebrate Valentine's Day. So if you're feeling maybe a little bit lonely or you're not sure how to celebrate, or if you even want to celebrate, I mean, you certainly don't have to, but we could make this a fun day. So if you have a partner, obviously we know the classic things: going to dinner, going on some sort of Valentine's date excursion. It could be cooking a meal with them at home, which is what I personally will be doing, and also with his parents. So we're having a little family Valentine's Day, and I'm going to be getting them all little Valentines and making a lovely, lovely, fresh, delicious dinner. But besides the typical flowers, chocolate, date activities, what if we thought of Valentine's Day as a way to truly express our love for another? And I have been thinking about this. Last year, I gave my husband a handmade card. It had pictures of our family in it, and it was all handwritten, hand-created. I won't say it was the best looking thing ever, but I was very proud of it. And I just wonder, what more can we incorporate like that? Can we actually write a love letter, like an old school love letter to our partner? Maybe you can actually use a feather pen or something. Some papyrus. Is that a thing? Is papyrus paper? It is, right? I don't know. I also think the gift giving is something interesting too, right? Because we're typically just going to, a chocolatier or Albertsons and getting some sort of Valentine's gift. But what if it was something a little bit more meaningful? Like I was actually trying to find golf balls because my husband loves golfing. but that have a bunch of hearts on them. So, but I couldn't really find any that would get here in time. Apparently I thought of that too late. But what meaningful gifts can we give our partners for Valentine's Day versus the traditional stuff? Now, if you're celebrating yourself, what about a solo date? And maybe the thought of going to a restaurant on Valentine's Day doesn't overly excite you. Because, listen, I love a solo dinner, especially when I lived in New York. I went alone to dinner all the time. It was actually a place where I learned to be alone because, I don't know, when you're living in a city like that, it's so easy to walk downstairs and go get breakfast or dinner. And when I'm living somewhere a little bit more rural than that, I'm not doing that as often. But you can absolutely take yourself on a solo date if you want to go see all the other couples on Valentine's Day, sure. But another idea would be like a walk in nature, or going for a hike, or going to a bookstore and maybe buying a romance book. Actually, that sounds like a great date. Maybe my husband will take me on that kind of date. If not, I'll go solo. But yeah, in some sort of way, can you be present with yourself? And I know I said earlier that bubble baths, I'm not trying to downplay a bubble bath. I take baths multiple times a week. So that's an idea too. I love the Lush bath bombs. I put those in there. I put Epsom salt. I put bubbles, obviously. I have a bath oil, and then I put on a face mask and an eye mask, and I light the candles, and I have a book and a journal. Really, what's a better Valentine's date than that? And then if you're with your friends, like I had the Galentine's Day thing, you could also host, right? There's so many things you could do. I actually think this could be such a wonderful holiday that people could celebrate if we think beyond the traditional Hallmark version of it. But you could have all of your friends over and watch a really cheesy romance. You could watch Twilight or a good romance too, but anything like that, and have snacks and kind of like Gilmore Girls it with the popcorn and candy. And there's just so many ways that you can celebrate. And then I think if we think beyond loving ourselves or our partner or our friends or our family, what else could we do on Valentine's Day that represents caring for others, even if you don't know them? And something that I think is really great is giving in some way, whether that be volunteering, whether that be donating to charity, whether that be buying someone Starbucks in line that's in front of you, or I guess they would need to be behind you. You could leave flowers on your neighbor's doorstep. Wouldn't that be so sweet? Can you imagine? Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that might be a little creepy. Like if someone just left me flowers and I didn't know who they're from, that might scare me. But maybe I'm paranoid. Maybe you could put a note from your neighbor, make it clear that some old stalker of theirs isn't leaving flowers on the front door. Anyways, if we can somehow give anonymously back to the community or to strangers, I think that would be a lovely way to celebrate. You could also just take care of the earth. You could go pick up some trash. You could garden. You could plant a tree. You could plant flowers. Isn't that the best Valentine's Day activity? So I think I spent a lot of time suggesting activities, but they were flowing to me. So if any of those resonate with you, maybe incorporate that for this Valentine's Day. Or if something sparked while I was talking about that, I would love, actually comment if you're thinking of something a little bit different you could do for Valentine's Day this year. I would love to hear it. So my point is, this Valentine's Day, if we can think about love in all aspects, love for ourselves, love for others, love for our community and the earth that is so gracious to host us. If we can think about it in that way and really taking care of yourself this Valentine's Day, this Saturday, maybe that's your one mission this Valentine's Day. Take care of yourself first, right? Start your morning with a nice coffee and relax outside and journal and go for a walk, and then move on to caring for others as well. And you could use this opportunity to reflect on, what is my self-care routine? Am I taking care of myself regularly? Do my behaviors align with the way that I want to love others? And how can I practice love more consistently this year? What could I incorporate into my everyday life that gives a little more love? The funny thing about love is the more you give, the more you get. So if we can think about it in that way, I think we could all have a wonderful Valentine's Day. All right, I always talk about what is making me cozy this week. And I suppose I'm going to go with Valentine's Day theme, which is that we are cooking like a really nice dinner here for me and my husband and his parents. And I'm going to incorporate some of these things I just came up with for my Valentine's Day. So I'm excited. I'm excited to have, and also my husband and I are going on a hike, and we're going to picnic style it, which is something we used to do when we first started dating. So I'm very excited for all of that. I think it'll be a cozy, love-filled Valentine's Day. Let me know what you guys are doing for Valentine's Day. Would love, get it? Would love to hear it. All right. Take care and go love yourself. Bye.